Let me ask you about the state of Georgia. Obviously, yesterday, the governor there, he certified the election for Joe Biden. It's about 12,000 votes. And what you see, will Georgia switch?
Yeah, that's a total farce. Georgia's probably going to be the first state I'm going to blow up, and Mr. Kemp and the Secretary of State need to go with it because they're in on the Dominion scam with their last-minute purchase or award of a contract to Dominion of $100 million. The State Bureau of Investigation for Georgia ought to be looking into the financial benefits received by Mr. Kemp and the Secretary of State's family about that time. And another benefit Dominion was created to award is what I would call election insurance. That's why Hugo Chavez had it created in the first place. But I also wonder where he got the technology, where it actually came from, because I think it's hammer and scorecard from the CIA.
Just to clarify, you're saying that Governor Kemp, who's been a longtime ally of the president, is directly involved because of financial benefit in the conspiracy to defeat the president in Georgia?
We have certainly been told that there is evidence of that, and it would warrant an investigation if anybody were actually going to do an honest investigation.
What more could you tell us about that alleged conspiracy? Is the governor's involvement?
I can't give you any more details on that now, but it would certainly warrant an investigation. If it had been reported to me as a law enforcement officer, I would be investigating it steadfastly.
So, if you're following along at home, Trump's lawyer Sidney Powell is now accusing the Republican governor and Secretary of State of Georgia of conspiring with the CIA to steal the election from their own party's president, Donald Trump, so they could benefit from election insurance that was created by Hugo Chavez, who died in 2013. Did I miss anything? Where do we even begin? I guess the most obvious question here, although by no means the only question, is why would one of Trump's closest allies in the state, Brian Kemp, want Donald Trump to lose? He may very well be Trump's most vocal advocate in the entire state of Georgia. And yet we're supposed to believe that he's in cahoots with the CIA to steal the election away from him? If nothing else, this shows the lengths that Trump's team will go to try and explain away the fact that, quite simply, he lost because people didn't vote for him. Period. Also, it's telling that Powell suggests that the governor and Secretary of State were, quote, in on the scam, and yet when she's asked point blank if Kemp was, quote, directly involved, suddenly she backtracks and says, we've been told there's evidence. Not exactly the home run argument that she was making it out to be only seconds earlier. It should speak volumes that she's aware enough to limit her own liability for slandering someone. In other words, she knows full well to protect herself because what she's saying is complete BS. And by the way, this has been the Trump team's strategy all along. They'll make these sweeping, insane accusations of fraud out in public, but when it's time to defend those allegations in court, where there are actually consequences for making false charges, suddenly they're silent. Suddenly the Trump team makes it perfectly clear that what they're alleging has nothing to do with fraud, but just a few low-level process complaints instead. Funny how it always seems to work out that way, huh? Here are some examples. In a federal case in Pennsylvania, which Giuliani had preempted at his Four Seasons Total Landscaping parking lot press conference with pointed accusations of widespread fraud, he quite literally told the judge, quote, "This is not a fraud case." In that same case, another Trump lawyer reiterated explicitly that she was, quote, not proceeding on allegations of fraud. In a different state case in Pennsylvania, a judge asked Trump lawyers if he was alleging fraud, to which Trump's lawyers responded, "Your Honor, accusing people of fraud is a pretty big step. It is rare that I call somebody a liar, and I'm not calling the board of the DNC or anybody else involved in this a liar. Everybody is coming to this with good faith." The judge asked again, "Are you claiming that there is fraud in connection with these 592 disputed ballots?" To which Trump's lawyer responded, "To my knowledge at present, no." In Maricopa County, Arizona, while Trump was tweeting that hundreds of thousands of votes were stolen from him, his own lawyers in court said, quote, "We are not alleging fraud in this lawsuit. We are not alleging anyone stealing the election," conceding instead that the case concerned a limited number of cases of good faith errors in operating machines. They eventually dropped the case. In Nevada, lawyers representing Trump alleged criminal voter fraud in a public letter to Bill Barr, and yet in their court filing, the word fraud never appeared and instead focused on smaller claims regarding the use of scanning machines to verify signatures and whether observers could watch the counting process. In other words, this entire post-election period has been steeped in public allegations of fraud, while in court, where there are legal consequences for unfounded claims, those lawyers have fallen over themselves to assert that they are not alleging fraud, meaning they're happy to manipulate their voters in public, but not when their own jobs or licenses are on the line. In case you were wondering the extent to which they know that they're willfully lying to their own supporters. And even Republicans have started to acknowledge this publicly. Republican Senator Ben Sasse said, quote, "Based on what I've read in their filings, the Trump campaign lawyers have stood before the courts under oath. They have repeatedly refused to actually allege grand fraud because there are legal consequences for lying to judges." Mitt Romney tweeted, "Having failed to even make a plausible case of widespread fraud or conspiracy before any court of law, the president has now resorted to overt pressure on state and local officials to subvert the will of the people and overturn the election. It is difficult to imagine a worse, more undemocratic action by a sitting American president." I mean, even Tucker Carlson called Sidney Powell out for her outlandish claims that aren't backed up by a scintilla of evidence.
On Sunday night, we texted her after watching one of her segments. What Powell was describing would amount to the single greatest crime in American history. Millions of votes stolen in a day. Democracy destroyed. The end of our centuries-old system of self-government. Not a small thing. Now, to be perfectly clear, we did not dismiss any of it. We don't dismiss anything anymore, particularly when it's related to technology. We've talked to too many Silicon Valley whistleblowers. We've seen too much. After 4 years, this may be the single most open-minded show on television. We literally do UFO segments. So that's a long way of saying we took Sidney Powell seriously. We had no intention of fighting with her. We've always respected her work. We simply wanted to see the details. How could you not want to see them? So we invited Sidney Powell on the show. We would have given her the whole hour. We would have given her the entire week, actually, and listened quietly the whole time at rapt attention. That's a big story. But she never sent us any evidence, despite a lot of requests, polite requests, not a page. When we kept pressing, she got angry and told us to stop contacting her. When we checked with others around the Trump campaign, people in positions of authority, they told us Powell has never given them any evidence either, nor did she provide any today at the press conference. Powell did say that electronic voting is dangerous, and she's right. We're with her there. But she never demonstrated that a single actual vote was moved illegitimately by software from one candidate to another. Not one. So why are we telling you this? We're telling you this because it's true. And in the end, that's all that matters. The truth. It's our only hope. It's our best defense.
When you lose Tucker Carlson, that doesn't exactly bode well for your credibility. What we're witnessing right now is what happens when you put your party into the hands of conspiracy theorists and clowns. Not only are Republicans losing relentlessly in court, but they've somehow managed to become even more of a national joke than before. And unless Sidney Powell can show up in court and prove that Georgia's Republican officials conspired with the CIA to steal the election from their own party's president so they could collect election insurance per a scheme coordinated by Venezuela's Hugo Chavez before he died in 2013, then this whole charade is going to make them seem like even more of a sideshow than before. To be honest, whereas I'd normally caution against watching these corrupt Trump officials, in this instance, I'd probably make an exception. Every news network should broadcast Sidney Powell and her full, unedited statements, because what she's saying is so obviously, laughably ridiculous that it can only do more harm to her side than good. If you like this video, please check out my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, where I take a deep dive into the week's most important stories and interview major players in politics, including Kamala Harris, Katie Porter, Adam Schiff, Nancy Pelosi, Eric Swalwell, Mary Trump, Al Franken, Cory Booker, and many, many more. Again, that's No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, available anywhere you listen to podcasts.